What's up guys, and welcome back to a Pokemon Sun and Moon coverage video, and today we are going to be talking about one of the new revealed Pokemon from June 30th / July 1st, Drampa, and its possible connections to Dunsparce. Now, what do I mean by possible connections? Well, there's a theory going around, or not really a theory itself, but lots of people have said, maybe Drampa is an evolution of Dunsparce, not necessarily the next stage, but it could be the next stage or it could be the final evolution of Dunsparce. We really don't know right now. So I'm going to be going through, looking at the evidence, I guess, supporting the fact that it could be an evolution of Dunsparce, talking about whether it's possible and stuff like that, basically. So to start off, we'll look at the typing, because that's one of the main integral parts to it, because obviously you can't have a fire type evolving into a water type, really, unless of course it goes fire to fire water, but you guys get the idea. Well, Dunsparce is a pure normal type. Drampa is a normal dragon type. Now, over the years, a lot of people have said, give us a Dunsparce evolution that becomes an amazing dragon, because obviously Dunsparce, as it is at the moment, it has tiny wings on its sides, but it's a little serpentine Pokemon, and a lot of people have thought, it'd be really cool if it became a dragon, just to sort of give it some pizzazz and actually have a reason for Dunsparce, because right now it's just on its own. So the idea of an evolution, or possibly a mega evolution for Dunsparce that turns it into a part dragon type, has been around for a while. So this sort of seems like fan service, I guess, if to actually give it a dragon type evolution, add a dragon onto it, but it's certainly possible. Because Drampa being normal dragon, it would make sense, have Dunsparce evolve. You wouldn't really change it from a normal type to a dragon type, you would add the dragon type to it, because it would just make sense in sort of the theme of Dunsparce. So in terms of typing, it's possible, but of course there are more things to look at than typing. Next, we're going to look at the colour schemes of these two Pokemon. So obviously, we have three colours mainly on Dunsparce. You can see yellow, blue, and also this sort of creamy colour, as well as the white for its wings. And then Drampa, you also have a blue main body. You have the white creamy colour for its dreads, its, I don't know what to call them, tail and stuff. And also has the pink eyes as well as the yellow sort of eyebrows, which gives us basically two main three main colours for each, yellow, blue, and cream. So if I bring these two colour schemes up and compare them side by side so you can see a bit more, basically they look almost exactly the same. You wouldn't be able to tell unless you held them close to each other, but basically Drampa's yellow is slightly darker, his blue is slightly darker as well, and his cream is slightly more grey, sort of between cream and white almost, than Dunsparce's. Now, does this support or does this not support Drampa being an evolution of Dunsparce? Well, in my opinion, it supports it, because they have the shared three colours, basically. Because generally when Pokemon evolve, they have a similar colour scheme. For example, I'm going to take Snivy, Servine, and Serperior. They're all green, and they're all similar shades of green. It's not like Snivy is this nice bright green and then Servine becomes this really dark green. There are slight deviations, of course, but in general it stays the same sort of colour scheme, colour shade almost. There are obviously exceptions to this rule, like Poliwhirl evolving into Politoed, going from blue to sort of a green colour. But of course that's a sort of more complicated evolution almost, because it involves the Tranium over King's Rock, so it's sort of different, and of course they want to deviate it from Poliwrath, but you guys get the idea. Basically, 9 times out of 10, a similar colour scheme supports evolution, sort of why. Or it could just be a coincidence, of course. But there are more things to look at. The next of these are its features. Of course, when Pokemon evolve up the chain, they tend to keep similar features. I'm going to use Snivy as the example again. When Snivy evolves into Servine, Servine, I don't know which one it is, but whatever. When Snivy goes into Servine, it keeps a similar body shape, similar sort of features. For example, the head is a similar shape. And of course it also carries across this little yellow design on its chest and sort of makes it a bit grander, and obviously Serperior carries on those traits, although slightly differently, because Serperior becomes a snake, a serpentine creature, but it keeps, generally in evolution lines again, they keep similar features, and some of those features will get bigger, some will obviously disappear, but generally features will carry across and just be built upon. So looking here, first up looking at the eyes, Dunsparce has these yellow eyes that have a sort of slit across them. We can assume that the eyes are just closed and the top half is actually an eyelid, but it has these very empty eyes. It's not very sort of animated at all, there's no pupil or anything. And then looking at Drampa's eyes, you can see they're now pink for some reason, but they're circular, they have no pupils or anything inside them, they're just open pink circles basically. Now, these are very similar styles of eyes because neither of them have pupils in or anything along those lines, and there's also the fact that, as I said, Dunsparce's eyes could be closed here, so if it were to open the eyes behind them could also be pink purpley colour, so that supports it there. Then we also have the two small wings for Dunsparce to look at, and obviously Drampa does not have wings, but Drampa does have these two sort of large fluffy areas down on its underside. Now we don't really know what these are at the moment. They could be some form of, sort of arms that just tucked away, or they could be wings, of course, just further down the front of its body. So again, that supports it there, because obviously they are a similar style as well, because the nice fluffy white wings, and again fluffy sort of, I'm going to call them wings on Drampa as well. Then finally we have the tail. Unfortunately, the tail does not support this because looking at Dunsparce's tail, you have basically a drill of sorts, and then looking at Drampa's tail, it's a fluffy, bushy tail, which doesn't work as well. You'd assume if they were going to evolve Dunsparce, the tail would have at least some sort of resemblance to the original tail, since it is quite a poignant tail. It's like a drill. It does, it uses it to burrow through the ground. So it's this sort of doesn't help out the theory that they are related, because obviously they're complete different tails, but we are told that Dunsparce burrows around in the ground, and we're also told that Drampa lives up in the high mountains, which means it doesn't really need to burrow around in the ground anymore, hence there's no real reason to have this drill tail there. So while it doesn't support the idea, it doesn't really say, they're not related, because of course features do not have to necessarily carry over, they can be changed. And next up we're actually going to look at the names of Dunsparce and Drampa. There's nothing really too much we can look at, but obviously, as I mentioned, I go back to the Snivy sort of link here. Names don't always mean that they're related, but Snivy, Servine, Superior, all beginning with S, and they all don't have the same sort of build, but Snivy, Servine, Superior, they sound well together, I guess I'm trying to say here. So sometimes names can, Poliwag, Poliwhirl, Politoed, you guys get the idea. Sometimes names can be related, but it's not necessarily a thing. Obviously, if Dunsparce was here, if Drampa was instead called like Dramsparce, then we might be like, well, okay, definitely related, but obviously there's nothing too much here. The only thing is this sort of the relation of both starting with a D, but that's nothing too, it's not binding evidence, of course. Now, the naming itself, Dunsparce comes from Dun, which means sort of like gloomy, or Dunce, meaning oh, you're the dunce, you're stupid, because Dunsparce isn't really a powerful Pokemon at all, as well as Sparse, which can relate to its rarity. Now, Drampa is basically a combination of dragon and Grandpa, which is sort of like an alternative way of saying granddad or grampy, whatever. So they don't have any particular relation there. You could argue that D on Dunsparce comes from dragon as well, but it's not as clear really, is it? But you could say Drampa having Grampa in the name, generally when a Pokemon has sort of an age or a sort of something like that in its name, it will relate to part of an evolution line. For example, most baby Pokemon have some form of little thing in it to relate to the fact that they are the baby. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but Cubchoo, for example, it's the first base evolution. Cub coming from cub, bear cub, for example. So Drampa, with Grandpa in it, indicated to me as soon as I heard the name that it was a final evolution. Now generally this wouldn't happen if it was just a Pokemon sitting on its own, so it might work with Dunsparce here, of course. We don't know though, just speculation right now. And the last thing we look at here is abilities. Now, sometimes, evolutions will share abilities, like same ability that a pre-evolution have will carry across. Trying to think of an example here, I think Oddish might be an example if I just quickly check. Oddish's main ability is Chlorophyll, Gloom's main ability is Chlorophyll, so it carries along the evolution chain a lot of the time. Now, sometimes when obviously evolutions are completely different, they will change, because obviously if you want to give a final evolution a really good ability for it, having that same ability on the base Pokemon would be really weird. So sometimes it will change to affect that, and obviously if Pokemon are sort of added in later generations, they could then change the ability for the final Pokemon to fix it, basically, because they might have added these Pokemon in earlier generations without even thinking about evolutions for them, and then coming to it they say, let's add an evolution for that Pokemon. What's their ability? Oh, it's run away. Great, brilliant. Yeah, we're going to change that. But sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Dunsparce's 3 abilities, 2 basic and 1 hidden, are Serene Grace and Run Away, and then finally its hidden ability is Rattled here. So we don't have a hidden ability for Drampa yet, but we do have 2 basic abilities. Now, hidden abilities aren't ever something that's really revealed by sort of promotional stuff. They don't, before X and Y came out, they didn't tell us that Greninja's hidden ability was Protean, did they? I don't think they did, at least. So it's just something that's usually found out through playing the games and such. So it's not any surprise that we haven't heard about Drampa's hidden ability. But two basic abilities, Berserk and Sap Sipper. Serene Grace, Runaway. If we compare them to Berserk and Sap Sipper, obviously they're totally different, they don't share abilities at all. But of course, would you really want a Drampa with the ability Runaway? And even the ability Serene Grace, that's a terrible ability basically. So of course, if they were going to introduce an evolution for Dunsparce, I would very much expect them to change the abilities regardless. So for example, if we just say, okay, Serene Grace is going to turn into Berserk when Dunsparce evolves, and Runaway can turn into Sap Sipper. They can easily do that, it's happened many times before, so there's no, you can't say, oh, they don't have the same abilities, because that's just an irrelevant point. It doesn't really support the fact that they are related at all, but it is a point that's, a null point almost. So, that is the video, guys. Let me know what you think down below. Do you think Drampa is Dunsparce's evolution? Would you like it to be, or would you like it to be a sort of a Pokemon sitting on its own? Let me know your thoughts down below, of course, and, like the video if you liked the video. But for now, this is going to be it for me for today. I'll be seeing you next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, my friends.